Hello and welcome to ElseNerds, a production of Galactic Network. I'm Gregor Sprague.
And I'm Corey Scott.
For all info on this show, including show notes and subscription links, go to ElseNerds.com. And for other Galactic Network programs, go to gncasts.com.
On ElseNerds, we're possibly going to swear, we're possibly going to spoil stuff. So you possibly may need to know that going in.
So you have possibly been warned. So yeah. Corey, how you doing, sir?
You know, I had an interesting weekend. I was walking around downtown and I saw some guy, I don't know, getting filmed or something. There was a large group around him. Everybody was really upset. And then I saw him point to a pin that he had that was a frog. I fucking hate frogs. So I just clocked the guy right in the face and ran off.
So, wait, did that happen up in Northern California?
No, I don't know where that happened. It's like it's everything that everybody was talking about today. It was like, is it okay to hit a Nazi? I'm like, well, that's the same question as would you go back in time and kill Hitler?
Yeah.
Maybe.
So would you?
Kill Hitler?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's sort of the mentality of I eat meat. I can't be a vegetarian, but I don't go out and slaughter my own cows. So while I'm okay with the meat appearing in front of me, I'm not really okay with doing the dirty work myself. Same thing. I don't want Hitler to be around, but can I be the guy who kills Hitler? I'm not sure. Just bring me my Hitler steak.
Bring you your Hitler steak. But yeah,
apropos of president-elects.
But no, yeah, that's actually pretty smart mentioning there. Yeah, I mean, I've been good. I mean, work is fun. Maybe getting a promotion here in a little bit. As I talk into the wrong part of the microphone. And yeah, so that'll be fun. And all that, but yeah, I don't know. Anyways, we should probably go on to the news. Actually do a show instead of just chit chat bullshit. Swear. The first three stories are actually really quick because they're just the headline tells you everything. So I'm just going to power through these. The first official title for Star Wars Episode 8 has been revealed, and it is Star Wars: The Last Jedi.
Yeah, it's slightly interesting because they've changed the coloring of the logo to red, which they usually do on the third movies in the trilogies. Because Revenge of the Sith went red, Return of the Jedi went red. The Last Jedi also, there's a lot of confusion as to whether or not it means is Rey the Last Jedi, is Kylo the Last Jedi, is Luke the Last Jedi. Jedi being a word that is both singular and plural could be a lot of things.
Yes.
So it's interesting.
Yes, and Star Wars: The Last Jedi is scheduled for release on December 15th. Flash and Supergirl musical episode is becoming a Glee reunion as they cast Darren Criss as the menacing music Meister. Explain who Music Meister is real quick.
Music Meister is actually, I don't know that this is a character that was original to the comics. I think it's kind of a playoff of one of the other characters. It may have been used in one of the Justice League cartoons at one point, I believe.
I believe the last time it was used was the Batman, and he was played by Neil Patrick Harris.
Right, that's it. Yeah. So, but it's probably the same sort of theme as what happened in the Buffy musical, which Demon came up and made everybody sing it, which works. The point is that we're going to watch this and we're going to enjoy it because of the characters and because of the actors and how all of their talents. And it's cute that they did get somebody from Glee to come back with them. Also from, I guess, their seasons of Glee, because I didn't recognize any of these people from the show when I was watching it, but I left kind of early.
Yeah, so real quick to fill everyone in, Grant Gustin and Melissa Benoist, who play Flash and Supergirl respectively, were both on Glee with Darren Criss. They were Darren and Grant's characters were at the preparatory school, like the rival prep school. And then Melissa came in as one of the later members of the Glee club. So yeah, it's a nice little. Maybe we'll get news and more Glee people. We'll get Jane Litch as
Well,
doing a cameo.
here's one more little tidbit about it. Is Darren Criss just recently was doing the play for Hedwig and the Angry Inch, which just before that had been brought out to the mega stage with Neil Patrick Harris. So Darren Criss stepping into another NPH role.
Yeah, exactly. And then the final quick hit news story is Samurai Jack's premiere date is announced. Samurai Jack will be coming back for season 5. This is not a reboot; it is a continuation on March 11th at 11:30 p.m. on as a part of Cartoon Network's Adult Swim Toonami line. And so yeah, this is exciting news. They've been re-airing Samurai Jack, and I flipped it last week to see the pilot, and I was astonished at how accurate the comic book was to the movie or to the TV show, because the comic book, which was written by Jim Zub, lots of pages with no writing.
Yeah.
Same thing with the TV show. Lots of action told through music and very little dialogue.
And I mean, that's the thing too, is Samurai Jack as a show on Cartoon Network itself I can't really see how it appeals as a kids show. It makes much more sense to be in the Toonami block than it does on the regular schedule in between episodes of Adventures of Gumball and Uncle Grandpa and shit. So makes a good deal of sense. It's good that it's come back. My best friend is a huge Samurai Jack fan. She loves the series. Calls Jack her betrothed. So I'm excited for her. It was not a show that I watched all the time. The episodes that I did pop into here and there were great, but it's heavy story, in 4 seasons. It might be something that you want to try to catch in syndication while they're replaying the episodes right now.
Yeah, and our more discussion-y story for ElseNews is that Seinfeld is actually leaving Crackle for Netflix. Now, this is not the sitcom. This is Jerry Seinfeld is bringing Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee to Netflix, which is it's currently airing on Crackle right now. And they're bringing all the past episodes, but then the new episodes will be premiering later this year in 2017. This is an interesting deal because I see this as a double-edged sword. This is great for Seinfeld because of just with how he's a big name, and just seeing him going, and this is not just Comedians in Cars, but this is stand-up specials as well. I believe I think it's gonna be a very similar deal to Dave Chappelle, and I think Chris Rock has a deal. Like, there's a few other comedians who have these deals with Netflix.
And Netflix seems to be dominating that market, where it used to be that you'd get comedians and it would be about when their special was going to hit either on Comedy Central or originally HBO, and HBO still gets a good deal of that. But Netflix has been getting a lot of these lately. A lot of the big names have been going over there. And maybe that's part of it, but the other part that there's some rumors, and it's just speculation at this point, it's not really even fully rumored, that Sony might be looking to sell off Columbia Pictures, because Sony has had a tough year. Their biggest films were not well received in the box office. Passengers and Ghostbusters both underperformed, and only 2 films for them made over 100 million this year, and that was Ghostbusters and the Angry Birds movie. Sausage Party came in third with 97 million. In the last 4 years, they've had 2 movies break 200 million, and that was Spectre, the James Bond movie, and Amazing Spider-Man 2. And we know that Amazing Spider-Man killed that franchise and forced them to relaunch in conjunction with Marvel for the Spider-Man character. So Sony's been in not incredible shape for the last few years, and all they have really coming up are Spider-Man: Homecoming, the Spider-Man animated movie, apparently after that, and the Emoji Movie, which just I don't even know what to think about that. But
Yeah,
Angry Birds is one of the only ones that did over 100 million, so maybe it's really kind of a tough time for them. And Crackle is a service that I think has always been an also ran. It's not something that people predominantly think of where they're going to go for content, especially original content. So
yeah, it's one of those that if you sign up for the newsletter, you will get the email saying this is what we have coming, and they've had, Firefly and Serenity on there, and a lot of the content that is, has Sony's involvement in there. But when it comes to originals, it's not a lot. I mean, Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee, has 3 Emmy nominations, in the Variety Talk series category. The only other originals that I could think of is there's the show Startup that stars Martin Freeman, which I watched that was really good. But I could easily see, if Crackle wanted to sell off some of the stuff, I could see, Amazon Prime, Hulu, Netflix, all picking that up and bringing it over there. Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee is already over there, and the other one is Sports Jeopardy. Sports Jeopardy is one that, you could put that on NBC Sports Network and be good.
Yeah, I see the ads for Sports Jeopardy all the time because I watch Jeopardy pretty regularly, and it's always like if you like Jeopardy, you go watch Sports Jeopardy. It's like, no, I don't want to watch fucking Sports Jeopardy, and I'm sure as shit don't want to go to a Crackle app that I have to download and install to watch it. And I'm a guy with fucking Roku's in every room and access to tons of streaming content. I just don't know that the non-technical people are aiming for that stuff. And at this point in time, there's so many different companies coming out with their own streaming services. And I was just going over this with the wife yesterday. It's going to be really hard to prove that you're worth investing in. She wants to get the streaming service Shudder, which is all horror movies and horror themed stuff, which makes absolute sense. And considering that I do a podcast that deals with some of that stuff, it would make sense for me too. We've been subscribed to the Full Moon Productions service for a while because that's where I watched Blood Dolls that we reviewed. And it was just like, oh, well, I'll keep this going. But there's not enough content there for it. And a lot of that stuff is on Shudder. So you have to get to a point where this stuff starts to consolidate. There's too many different ones and nobody's going to subscribe to it, or they won't subscribe to it for very long. It's like, here's my 30 days. Okay, CBS, I'll watch all the fucking shit pile of your Star Trek show if it ever comes out. And then I'll be done and I'll move along and maybe I'll get you next season when that happens again. But I'm not going to spend $8 a month on your service for one, maybe two things. Like, oh, here's your Big Brother spinoff. But what else have you heard about from CBS's service that's enticing? Nothing at this point. Whereas
for what I will say with that is, for the fans of the shows, the Good Fight does look intriguing.
Which one is the Good Fight?
That's the Good Wife spinoff that stars Ingrid from Game of Thrones.
Yeah, I mean, but that's just it. Are they underserving their audience on TV to try to get these shows launched on their streaming service, and how well is that going to pay off? I think people who want CBS content are so used to having CBS content on television, and their secondary TV thing, if we're not streaming TV content from an actual TV source, then it's Hulu.
Yeah.
Or if it's movies, then it's Netflix, or if it's Amazon, which has a mix of the two, but is so much a crapshoot, but it's there if you're already an Amazon Prime subscriber. It's kind of like there's Android and there's iOS, and then for a while there was Microsoft's phone service, but you could tell that there were the two things that people were going to keep going to. And I feel like that's the streaming services too, is that we've already found our winners. Yeah. And I don't think that's great. Yeah, there's HBO Go, because HBO is its own fucking beast. But HBO Go exists for people who cut cable, and that's it. I don't know, man. I see Crackle like I saw the Yahoo streaming thing that did the thankful for it, but the last season of Community is like, here's our half-ass attempt, and who knows? Like CISO's another one. CISO was out there, and his content that I would like to see, Dan Harmon's D&D gaming thing.
Harmon Quest, yeah.
Like fun. Yeah.
This is, I think we're starting to get, and I mentioned this in the pre-show, and I'll mention it here. I think we are starting to get to, I don't want to say the bubble for streaming services, but we're starting to get to that point with the streaming services where the bigger ones are going to eat the little ones.
Well, we're at maximum capacity, I think is what it is. Remember when Microsoft had their original content with the Guild was on Xbox streaming, and then PlayStation had their content with the Brian Bendis show
with Powers.
Yeah, but these things came and dried up, and those are not small companies. These are powerhouses. YouTube can't get original content to really go anywhere, and we're talking about fucking YouTube, and we've known amazing people who've worked at YouTube. It's kind of a weird thing to see that the audience goes to where things are the best deal for them, or where they think everybody else is. And right now that seems to be Netflix, Hulu, Amazon. It's the same thing as like, why is everybody on Facebook? Because it's fucking Facebook.
Because no one wanted to be on Vine. But no, I think with Amazon they have a little bit of a extra head, and in where I could see them acquiring a lot of these other things, because you can already add the quote unquote channels. Like the Comic-Con HQ, you can add a subscription to them, and it's billed through Amazon. Shudder, you can bill through the Amazon Prime. So I mean, if you're paying the $99 a year for Prime, you can then add, like,
which is exactly what I think, is that it's at some point they've just become the additions to another service, or another service buys them out. We get you, and we get all your contracts with the people that you already have things on, and then we just make it all in one. And that's what Comcast does. That's what all of these things do. And then you have the wars between, well, Comcast owns NBC or vice versa, and so we don't have to worry about having deals with NBC on our own network, but sometimes we have to fight to keep CBS on our thing. Or AT&T does the same thing. It's like, well, we're not going to pay for your TNT channels. Well, shit, then you're going to lose a lot of stuff, and you're going to lose a lot of viewers, and you're going to get a bunch of commercials saying, hey, by the way, guys, do you like The Walking Dead? Yeah, AT&T is trying to screw you over by taking it away. You should call them and rip them a new asshole.
Yeah. No, exactly. But yeah, that's gonna do it here for the ElseNews. We will be right back. And we are back, and it is time for the ElseViews. This is the section where we talk about the TV shows, movies, video games, whatever is on our minds. And I have 13 episodes I want to talk about.
Finally, I'm not going to be seen as a long-winded one.
No, well, it surprised me with mine, with how quick it went through. Like I binged through the show on Sunday. And that show is Voltron Legendary Defenders season 2. it's we're picking up right after the right after season 1 ended, and you have it's still everyone's still here, and or actually no, everyone gets separated, and so it goes. You go from them being separated. You have 3 episodes, I want to say, of them getting back together. And then you have them get like recuperating and gathering, into the next, um, gathering into the net, to form an alliance with this other group of aliens, and then they fight. The final episode is them fighting. I'm blanking on the villain's name, but they're fighting the villain. And in there, I'm skipping a lot of stuff, but because a lot of it is hilarity ensues, and shit hitting fans and stuff like that. Incredible voice cast. I think Weird Al does a voice in one of the episodes.
Oh, that would be nice.
Yeah, I think it's the. I'll have to double check. I actually tried to look up on Wikipedia while I was watching it, but I think it's the episode. It's episode 3, 2 or 3. It's the one with Hunk and Lance, underwater. He plays one of the crazy he plays one of the people who would wear a hat that's foil lined, because he feels like an alien's inclined to probe his butt or read his mind. Just basically, I'll just quote his whole song here. But yeah, I mean, it's really good, really fun. God, Reese Darby steals just about every scene he's in that he talks about, or that he's in there voicing, with his character. But yeah, it's great. I think I found a new reason for loving this show, and it is with the how Reese Darby's character is essentially a comic relief. It's because they can have a super serious moment and then do one little thing for comedy to not make it so doom and gloom, but be like, hey, it's a kid show. Remember, it's a kid show, sort of thing. And I actually really enjoyed that. Because
yeah, we watched the pilot at the beginning of last season, and I enjoyed it. It was just one of those things that the pilot was long. The pilot was not a short episode.
No, the pilot
and
was,
so
like an hour long.
Felt longer than that. But yeah, we just never got back to it. But even my wife Erin was like, "This is actually pretty good." There's some funny dialogue in this. There's some good stuff happening here. So I don't think it's one of those things that she would be mad if I was watching it and she happened to be in the room, which is always nice. But it is solid. The thing to me is, like, I grew up with the original Voltron, and I have no problem with them updating it and making changes and certainly making it more serious. But what I remember of season 2 of Voltron is, like, you were there that first season, you were like, oh, this kicks ass, and all these guys and like the lions and shit. But by the time the season ended, we had already lost Sven, who was the I think the blue lion, or maybe the black lion. No, it was the blue lion.
Blue lion, and
he had the black
lion
outfit, but at the blue lion, like, the outfits didn't match up which lions they were in, which I thought was weird. But Sven, like, disappears, and so Allura took over as one of the pilots. So that's one thing that I would expect to be happening by now. And my other expectation is season 2. Shouldn't we have the fucking vehicles? The other Voltron that's made up of the 15 vehicles, like the land, sea, and air teams? Because that's what they did in the first one. And boy, that messed people up. The storyline. Yeah, the storyline of it was really interesting. Because they were different shows. Like, there was a lion thing that they were making the Voltron for America, and it was one show. And then there was the Voltron that was the vehicles, that was another show. But they tried to make them interrelated because they all combined into giant robots. There was actually a third Voltron that was supposed to be 3 robots that combined together. I remember that from the toys.
3 robots combined to make a bigger robot.
But the only ties between Voltron, the Lion Force, and Voltron, the automobiles, was that Pidge from the Lions was the brother of Chip from the vehicle force, which is like, but that was it. It was kind of a weird thing, but they go into a story about Chip where he's like waiting for a letter from his family and waiting for a letter from Pidge. He's not sure if people are hiding stuff from him. The story was much deeper on the vehicle stuff, but there was just too many goddamn characters. But I'd still like to see that happen. Not like them dedicate a whole season to it, but I'd like to see something with those other characters and with the vehicle Voltron like show up at some point. That's just like an Easter egg thing that just seems too cool to not do something.
All I'm gonna say, because you are hitting on a lot of things that, like, I'm like, oh damn, he's really close. Because like, for example, season 2 with Sven leaving, you ain't wrong.
I tend to do that. I tend to think things too much and not enjoy the shows as much as I should.
No, it's still enjoyable. It's still enjoyable, and I'm saying that with the hopes that people aren't like me and went to Wikipedia and did the cross-examination of the character, who he was voiced by in the 80s, voiced by in the 90s, voiced by in the 2011 reboot, and then voiced by in Legendary Defenders. Because you ain't wrong, and you spoiled season 3 a little bit, I think. But the no, you're starting to see this. That was one of the things that I forgot with season 1 is that was Pidge's brother. And Pidge, and they brought it in one episode. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. She's looking for her brother, and stuff like that. But I honestly think you will enjoy the show. I mean, especially because not especially, but because you like Voltron so much. But then, like, I watched this and I still can relate it to Korra and Avatar, because it had the same animation team that did Avatar: Last Airbender and Legend of Korra, and I think the same showrunners.
Yeah, and it is a beautifully animated show, from what I saw of the first season.
But yeah, it's I'm curious, as you if you do continue, you do start watching Voltron again, comparing it to the older show, because for me, I didn't watch the older show. It was, I always looked at it in the, well, that's freaking, I got Transformers, why would I want Voltron, sort of thing. And it was never on, when I was, here. It was Transformers. So I'm like, all right, there's only Transformers, there's nothing else.
Yeah, my day it was there was Transformers, there was Voltron, there was Silverhawks, there was Thundercats. Those were the mega four. And Silverhawks was kind of like secondary to Thundercats. But it was the same animation type deal and the same storytelling. But then you had the other cartoons that were just like filler in the afternoon while you're waiting to get to the good ones. Like you had GoBotch, which was just the shit can version of Transformers. And you had the Filmation Ghostbusters, which was just awful. But just waiting to get to these shows. And then later on, they started bringing in more anime crossover stuff like Transor Z and things. But nothing compared to the storytelling of these shows, and when they were trying to put this stuff together to make this happen. Voltron is always going to have a big place in my heart.
Yeah. All right. So, Corey, what's it like in Philadelphia right now?
It's sunny, but it's always sunny in Philadelphia. So, all right. So, do you watch South Park?
I've seen all of 3 episodes.
Really? Okay, crap. When South Park started, like, South Park was a big freaking deal for the first few seasons, especially. And they got the movie and everything, and it was like South Park has been on for a long time.
Yeah.
And most people I know at this point don't really watch it, but it's still on. And anybody who does watch it, or anytime I like wind up popping in here and there and seeing like a new episode of South Park, it's like, oh, nothing else is on, I'm going to watch this rerun of something from this season of South Park. It's still really good. It's still well written. It's still well produced. It's as strong as it's probably ever been. You know, obviously we have our high points of the seasons and things, and Cartman feeding the chili to the kid, and like I made you eat your parents, or Mecha Streisand if you want to go way back classic. you just kind of wonder, can South Park retain how good it is, and how long can it do that? Always Sunny is sort of the same thing. I didn't realize how many seasons Always Sunny had been on. It's on season 12. Like, there's not a lot of episodes. It always seems to like come in and go out really fast, and by the time that you're just like, oh, Always Sunny is back on, great, and you watch a few episodes and then it's gone again. So maybe that's part of it. But they kind of wait until they're ready to put shit out there, when they're gonna put it together and have it done, because it's the cast that kind of runs it. And I feel like that's a strength of it. Now, other than the fact that it's been moved to FXX, XXXXXQ with a silent T, it's retained what it's always been. You know, with the addition of Danny DeVito, which was, I think maybe was the 3rd season or something.
Yeah, he was very early on.
Yeah, it was pretty early, but it was still like he wasn't there originally. It really found its groove, and it stuck it out. And I was just like, okay, but the last couple of seasons I remember watching it, and I'm like, some of the episodes might have not been as strong, but it's like that any season. You get some good ones, and you get some great ones, and you get some okay ones. So I came into the new season of Sunny, which started this month, and I was just like, well, let's see how it's going to be, if it's going to be good, because we know that the actress from the show is moved over, and she's on the Mick now on Fox. And so is she going to be as invested in this? Is it going to be the same level, or is everybody like getting famous and going off their own directions? Charlie is obviously doing a lot of stuff. I was just rewatching Horrible Bosses 2 the other day. He's super funny in that. So can they bring their A game to this show that was where they got their start at this point? And holy shit, the first episode of the season is the gang turns black. And they're watching The Wiz on TV. There's an electrical surge. Everybody blacks out. They wake up the next day, and they look in the mirror, and they've all turned into African Americans. But it's not just that. Like, that itself, you could already tell they're going to be able to mine the fuck out of this, and it's going to be a great episode. But it's not just that, because they were watching The Wiz. It's also a fucking musical. So they're going around and they're trying to figure out what happened, how do they fix it, where do they go. They're getting accused of crimes, and is this a hate crime? What is? I feel like the cops are coming at us because we're black. And DeVito's character wants to say the N-word because it's the only chance he's ever going to get to say it. But he's like, no, you can't say that. It doesn't matter. But it's just it is probably the funniest episode I've seen since like the introduction of the Nightman songs, like Dayman and Nightman. It was so fucking good, and the music was good, and it got caught in your head, and it just kept going. And then it's like, okay. And then the second episode was they go to a water park, and it's one of the episodes where every kind of breaks off into their own groups. And so there's a Charlie story with Frank. There's a D story with Mac, and then Dennis has got his own story where he's running grifts trying to get women to sleep with him and stuff. But then this kid winds up grifting him, and so they team up and they're like grifting the whole park, and that was phenomenal. And then the third episode was okay. It was like they put cameras into Charlie and Mac's mom's house where they're both living. They wanted to do it to see if like they were living okay together, if one of them was being abusive to the other one. But then Dennis decides to put laugh tracks to it and turn it into a sitcom because Dennis likes taping people. And it's a good, solid episode and plays off of a lot of things that have been established in the characters before. But that's the thing is you get the comfortable ones, and it's okay because you just kind of love the characters and you love what they do at this point. But those first 2 episodes were so good, and especially The Gang Turns Black. It's like, I don't know that the show can do something bad. I don't know if they can make bad TV at this point. They're experts.
Yeah. Now, when with The Gang Turns Black, is it blackface or
no? No, you see them walking around and they're themselves and they're singing and they're doing all the little dances and stuff. But in the mirror, they see who they look like. And Dennis is a large guy and Charlie is a kid. So you got to imagine Charlie like walking around saying Charlie shit. And he's playing with the train like the cops when they bring him in. They give him a toy train to play with. And Charlie's like, fucking hey, I'm playing with this toy train. And he loves it.
Look at this train.
And they all think, well, yeah, because he's like 8 and shit. It just nails it down perfectly.
No, this is one of the shows that, I mean, like you asked earlier, I never really got into South Park. I don't know why exactly. But I got in very quick to It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I think because it was partnered up with the League.
Right.
And and I was like, okay, watching the League and I like, It's Always Sunny. It was like one of them led to the other. But I think I came in on It's Always Sunny during season 2 or 3.
It would have been at least 3 or 4, because before when it first came out, I don't even think it had a show that went with it. And then there was a season where it had Testes was the other show that it shared the hour with, and Testes was really funny but did not last long.
Yeah,
it took them a while to find something that would stick.
And I know because I know it was after Danny DeVito joined in season 2 when I started watching the show, but it then became one of these where like I just sort of fell out with it. But
yeah, and that's what I get.
Just hearing how you're talking about this, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna have to try. I'm gonna have to watch. It's Always Sunny again. Especially
that's exactly what I mean though. Is like it's at the point of like, oh, Always Sunny is back, but do I care at this point? Is it still gonna be good? I mean, from the start of this season so far, yes. Do you feel like they've done everything they can? Is like, oh, here's where we're gonna get our cricket episode, or whatever. Yeah, maybe, but they can still be innovative. They can still be some of the funniest shit on TV. They are all incredibly talented motherfuckers.
And I find it hilarious that for one of the seasons, Rob McKelly or McElhaney, he was sitting there and after they wrapped, he was like, what would be funny for Mac, for a season? What if he got fat and gained weight?
Well, you know why he did that?
Why?
Because his wife, who plays Sweet D, was pregnant, and he got fat to make her feel better.
I didn't hear that. I just heard from like the Conan, I think an interview on Conan where he's like, I just sort of thought, what would be funny for Mac? Well, he just gets really fat.
Yeah, which was pretty good.
Yeah.
But what a harsh thing to do to your body. Like, it always amazes me when actors do that when they fluctuate their weight. Like, some people go to big extremes, like Christian Bale doing Batman and then doing the mechanic or the machinist, I think. And then
machinist, then Batman, I think.
And then going on and doing things like the one with Jennifer Lawrence and Amy Adams and Bradley Cooper, American Hustle.
Yeah, American Hustle. Or Matthew McConaughey doing that for Dallas Buyers Club into Magic Mike.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. Yeah, I mean,
but doing it for comedy, that's balls.
Yeah. but no, that's just cool. So yeah, when is It's Always Sunny on?
I believe it's on Thursday nights now on FXX at
Yeah,
around 10 o'clock.
yeah. But no, that's cool, and I you got me to want to start watching it again.
Yeah, and if you're an Amazon Prime viewer, we've got a link in our notes here where you can go and watch the episodes on Amazon. I don't know if they're part of Prime or not, but you can at least watch them per episode.
Yep.
And when the season's done, you'll be able to get the whole season.
All right, and we will be right back. And we are back, and it is time for the ElseWords. This is the main topic, the main entree for the evening. And this is an article that we found that I found interesting for other reasons, and Corey shed light onto it. And that is David Ayer pens a message about Suicide Squad reception and the Joker's role. This comes to us from Collider, and a lot of people were giving Suicide Squad flack. I actually enjoyed it. And yeah, David Ayer wrote this big long message, thanking people, and he knew it was controversial. I'm gonna read the first paragraph. Thank you so much. I know it's a controversial film. I really tried to make something different with a look and a voice all its own. He later goes on to say about how he drew inspiration from the insanity of the original comics, and he goes on to talk about that he regrets some of the choices that he made, especially with the Joker, and that if he could do it over, he would have made the Joker the main villain and engineer a more grounded story. But he goes on and says that he's thankful for the opportunity because he's a high school dropout, and it's one of those, like, you can see how far he sees how far he's come from being like, fuck it, I'm not going to high school anymore, to now he's directing big budget movies and all
And,
that.
and a successful one.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing is there's a level of success that there's an expectation for these cinematic comic to film things that have been happening. But then there's the reality, which is it's not like this movie didn't do well. It was a movie that starred a bunch of characters that nobody had ever heard of, with some decent named actors in it. But for the most part, like Guardians of the Galaxy, didn't have expectations laid down on it when it came out. And it did very well. Did it do as well as Guardians? No. Did it do as well as a lot of the other superhero movies? Not all of them. But what did we expect from this film? Now, the problems that we see from the outside are things like, well, were the characters true to how they are in the comics? Did the plot make sense? Why was the Joker being featured so much in commercials and in magazines, and Jared Leto telling people how he sent people dead rats and shit and used condoms? Why was that being emphasized so much when he was such a small part of the film? And he even says in here, there isn't a secret edit of the film with a bunch of Joker scenes hidden in a salt mine somewhere. He's basically saying that the film that we have is the film as it is. Now, there was a director's cut or something, some special edition that came out that I have not seen that had some extra stuff.
Yeah, there was an extended edition that essentially fleshed out Harleen Quinzel. I will phrase it that way. Fleshed out the Harley Quinn character with her alter ego. Even there's a scene in there that I really like that I sort of wish was in the movies, where it's Harley examining, like psychoanalyzing everyone else on the Suicide Squad. And it reminds me of her in the New 52, in the New 52 universe right now, where, there are scenes where she is doing that, where she is psychoanalyzing everyone because she's, she is crazy, but she's not as crazy as everyone thinks she is.
Now, is that Harley in Suicide Squad or Harley in her own book?
Harley in Suicide Squad where it's used a little bit more.
The characterization between Harley in her own book versus Harley in other things is pretty loose. The changes between them, which is fine. There's Harley.
It's in both. Sorry, it is in both because of I forget what volume it is, but the one where they featured Cy Borgman and all that. It was her. I need a job. Well, I'm gonna go be a psychiatrist again, and all that.
Yeah, but that's still a little different. I mean, in her own book, she's hanging around talking to a stuffed beaver and making a lot of sort of crass jokes, like we don't hear.
Sort of crass.
Yeah, but fucking Jimmy and Amanda are writing it, and they're awesome. So I have no problem with it. Read the Pro sometime. That is a damn good comic. But yeah, so I mean, obviously, we know that there was some interference, or it's been reported there was some interference from the production company of like, oh, well, the amount of music that was used to just make scenes kind of pop. Also, the weird graphics of any time a character was introduced, and like, here's a little bit of a rundown that looks straight out of VH1 behind the music. Like, oh yeah, remember when fucking Mark McGrath was in this band? That stuff. I mean, that stuff kind of was the we don't trust the filmmaker sort of thing. Yeah. Is what it felt like. It felt hammered on. Also, I mean, you got to face it. You're talking about having these characters who have bullets and baseball bats and boomerangs fighting Superman. The premise of the movie is that we're getting these people together because we can control them. So if Superman ever goes off, we have a way of reeling him in. None of these people would reel him in. None of them have that capability, except for the one creature that's part of the team that went batshit crazy and became the bad guy for the movie. So it's weird how it worked out. There's a lot of problems with this film, but I get that, because you're taking something from comics and you're giving it a Hollywood spin, and you need to make stuff exciting for the big screen, and the characters aren't going to get their due because the character of Harley in the film isn't really exactly like Harley in the comics. The character of Deadshot is very little to do with the comics. And like, they also are trying to pitch their universe at the same time. So here's our Batman cameo, and here's our Bruce Wayne cameo at the end, and here's our Flash cameo. Whether or not they make any sense, like Boomerang should be a Flash villain. There should be an established history there, but we don't get any of that in this because we haven't established the Flash really yet.
Yeah, so, and they even that is a little bit of a misstep with a lot of this stuff here, because I mean, yes, we're with the Batman. Batman, he is a well-established. So with all these Batman villains that you have, you can get away with the Deadshot introduction. But there's a line in there where he says, and then the speed guy came out of nowhere, talking about the Flash. It's like, every time I've heard or seen, him in the Suicide Squad comic book, he's gone against the Flash, not I'm robbing this bank, and then all of a sudden here, I don't know why I'm making him sound Jewish. And then all of a sudden here comes the Flash, and I was just minding my own business, robbing my own bank, and all that sort of deal. I mean,
yeah, and you kind of like have to wonder why a guy who's calling himself Captain Boomerang doesn't really do dick with boomerangs in the movie either, except for one time when he uses a remote control one, which isn't a boomerang, it's a drone at that point.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of problems. I think most of it, not all of it, but I think most of it comes from the fact that it was the wrong time to put this movie out in the DC universe as they were filming it. Because in this movie, we're supposed to accept things like, oh, Harley and Joker killed Robin. But we never saw that. We don't know anything about a Robin in this universe. And now apparently we never will. It doesn't really work. It's a lot of things that are just kind of said. It's shown the aftermath without a context to attach to it. So we don't get a feeling for these characters or the characters it's supposed to be attached to from the other movies. We just barely seen Batman and Superman duke it out in the streets with one woman showing up and saying, "Oh, hi, guys, I got a sword." And that's about it. So I get why it didn't work, but I have to say that one, I didn't hate this movie when we reviewed it before. I just thought it was okay. It was enjoyable. It was the people up on the screen were enjoyable to watch. As ridiculous as everything was, as forgettable as the villains were, or the plot, however it was somehow resolved at the end, it somehow came together, whether or not it made sense. All of that aside, it was at least something that I didn't hate myself for watching it.
Yeah. When
it was all said and done, it's not something I'm jumping up and down to go watch again. But I get it, and I think that from that context, he did a good job. You know, working with someone else's story and someone else's characters and everything else. But more than that, he shows humility. He says, yeah, it could have been better. I would have liked to have made it better in hindsight. You know, not even saying like, oh, well, they dicked me over. Like the Fantastic Four thing of, oh, well, they took my movie and they ripped it to shit, and so that's why it sucks. Well, no, they were working with your stuff. So your Fantastic Four movie had shit available. I don't know what really could have been done with the footage you have. But this guy isn't like that. One, he's not pissing off the people that he works for, saying, please don't ever hire me again. But two, he's honest. I really appreciate that in this day and age. For someone to not be the, I think I'm awesome, and you're all wrong for not thinking I'm awesome, it's nice to see this perspective.
Now, what would be the difference between this and something like with George Lucas re-editing and rejiggering the original trilogy all the time? What's the difference between that? Because
George Lucas did it to himself.
Yeah.
George Lucas chose to break his existing beloved movies, his beloved trilogy, and said, oh, but I can make them better somehow. But he didn't. And he can't see past that as the fans who've watched those movies and loved them for years are like, please give us our original movies. He could not see past his own ego. Sorry, George, to say, all right, here, you know, for the people who want the originals, here's the originals. And for the people who want the trounced up ones, here's the trounced up ones. And for people who want the prequels, you're fucking nuts. Oh, I'm sorry. I mean, you can have those too. I think that George got to a point where he didn't see that he was making his own mistakes, but it was his mistakes. Nobody was telling George what to do in those cases. Yeah. And that's why I think the original trilogy probably works better than the prequels, is because he had other people he was working with at the time.
Fair enough. I don't know. That was the only thing I could think of as a comparison, because I mean, usually it's like, I like this attitude that he has, that David Ayer has, because that sort of tells me, you know, like he has that artist's personality of like, it's never quite finished. But at the same time, it's sort of like, well, why didn't we get that?
Yeah, I mean, there is a point in time where you have to let art live as its own thing. You know, you're gonna have to walk away. You're gonna have to. I can't edit the story anymore. I have to put it out there. I can't make this film any better. Or it's been 10 years and the movie's existed. I can't or shouldn't go back and change it now. I think that's something that every director, writer, composer, whoever has to kind of deal with. Is you're always going to think, oh, if only I'd done this, it would be better. But that's how you learn and make the next thing. It's not a matter of going and revising history, unless you're killing Hitler. Because I want a burger. It's what you do to become a better artist going forward. And I think that this guy gets that. I think this guy seems to have the right handle on it. He's not Zack Snyder saying, oh, well, fucking, but it's going to be cool and shit that Batman and Superman fight, and that this fucking kryptonite staff gets thrown into the water just to be retrieved from the water 5 minutes later. Drama? And you guys are all butt hurt because I'm so cool. No, Snyder, your stuff isn't cool. And that's why everybody else in WB right now, in regards to films, keeps saying, we're going to go lighter. We're going to have comedy. People are going to smile and stuff. It's like, he's the only one who hasn't said that yet.
Yeah.
He might do it. It might happen. But I feel like that's another thing, too, is that Ayers took heat that was probably not as necessary to land on him because of the problems that were already going on with the Snyder films.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you in the fact that this was too soon. The Suicide Squad movie was too soon in happening for many reasons, but the big reason of there was a lot more humor in here, and when you're coming from Batman versus Superman, which not very, there's humor in it in other ways. The emo redheaded Lex Luthor, I see that, I could see.
What's funny is that Luthor works contextually in Suicide Squad better than in Batman v Superman.
Yeah.
Whereas possibly Amanda Waller works better contextually in Batman v Superman than she did in Suicide Squad. That's the thing, is like, I don't know that they're sure where to utilize their things the best. And Joker, I don't know where Joker belongs. The way that he was portrayed in this film, it's still like, it's I think it's heartening and also disappointing at the same time that Jared Leto is still posting Joker stuff, and like they may be utilizing him somewhere down the road in the film universe, even though all the kind of things blew up after Suicide Squad and his parts of it seemed to disappear. I appreciate the fact that they aren't giving up on him. I like Jared Leto as an actor in a lot of things.
Yep.
But I think his Joker was such a misfire. To double down on it is going to be difficult to accept.
I could see them doing something, if they were to take a storyline from the comics. I could see them doing the from the Batman Rebirth, where they had shown that it was 3 people playing the Joker. Essentially, I could see them doing something like that.
That's a hedge your bets thing, which is already ridiculous in comics. I don't want to see that happen in the films.
Yeah,
and the same thing with Luthor. Again, I don't hate the actor. I did not like the portrayal of Luthor that they had him play, that they chose him to play. At any point in time, the director and writer could have said, "Wait, this is not working the way that we thought it should. Maybe we should back off on this a little bit and try to reconfigure things or trade up." But I don't know then how you take what is, even by the fans, looked at as one of the worst parts of Batman v Superman, and move forward with that in the next film. It's tough because these movies are not made to stand on their own. These movies are made to build a long line of films, and you kind of have to live with the results of when you screw up at the beginning. How do you clear that up? How do you make that work later on? And they got lucky that when Green Lantern screwed up, it wasn't already tied into their giant universe of movies. They just like, okay, we're gonna walk away from that Green Lantern movie, and we're gonna go over to the Superman movie and hedge our bets on that. And I don't know if that's necessarily better. I mean, in my opinion, it's not been great, but it's tough to then say, no, 10 films already on the docket. But all the problems you've had with the first 3, we're totally gonna make them okay again. Trust us now.
Yeah.
That's hard. That's hard to do. And I'm saying it from the outside. I'm not the one making any of these movies, so it's real easy to judge when I don't have my shit on the line like they do. So I get it. It's tough.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's gonna wrap it up here for us. So we're just gonna do our little outro thing here. And you guys can contact us. Tell us how dumb we are, how right or wrong we are. In a couple ways. One is by leaving a voicemail at 805-328-3966, or by emailing us mail@elsenerds.com. You could find all of our subscription links, and our subscription options and links can be found under gncast.com/subscribe. And you could join our Facebook page under Galactic Network at facebook.com/galacticnetcasts. You can follow the show on Twitter, or the network. They're both at ElseNerds or at Galactic Netcasts. And you can follow the producers. Beatmaster is at Beatmaster80. Evan is at Mr_Fusion. I am at that Gregor, who I was just recently followed by Brandon from Sonics and Sabers, and Ben Gottlieb from Idiot Test. A little excited about that. But Corey, where can people find you and find the things you do?
You can find the comics that I do help either make or publish. So yeah, that's me putting myself out there on the line a little bit. You can go to don'taskcomics.com. You can read the Ayer stuff that I've written. You can read the other comics that Levi Krause has drawn and written. Spells, Levi's World, Shock with Scott Hall, all that stuff. don'taskcomics.com.
All right, and the final thing to be said is this has been a Don't Tell Glenn production. We'll see you next week.
Or else.
With Tom Merritt.